Last week, I watched Prestige once again, and I was reminded how spectacular it is. It's so good. And I really feel like it doesn't get the shine that it deserves, which I understand when the director is releasing movies like these every 2 years. Like, it makes sense. But personally, I feel like this might be in my top 2 Nolan movies. And I don't know if Nolan is ever gonna make something small scale like this again, so I'm glad that it was suggested so many times. So welcome to Classic Explained Episode 9, The Prestige. So to break it down, I'm going to use 3 themes. 1, fear of the unknown, where we'll discuss the 3 acts of The Pledge, The Turn, and The Prestige. Borden's twin, the transported man, the real transported man, and Nikola Tesla versus society. 2, false freedom from sacrifice, where we'll discuss Chung Ling-soo and his fishbowl trick, Borden's sacrifice, the knot tying scene, and Angier's pride. And 3, irony of rivalry, where we'll discuss Edison versus Tesla, the results of rivalry, Borden versus Angier, and the ending with the final exchange between Borden and Angier, and much more. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and a comment, it helps so much. And if you want to see more of these, please make sure to subscribe as well. Let's get started. Theme number 1, fear of the unknown. At the very beginning of this movie, we get a monologue from John Cutter, played by Michael Caine. And this monologue breaks down the 3-act structure of every magic trick. The first act is called The Pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary. The second act is called The Turn. The magician takes this ordinary something and makes it do something extraordinary. The third act is The Prestige, where you bring that something back to the way it was. And throughout the film, numerous times, we get to see our 2 main magicians, Alfred Borden and Robert Angier, demonstrate these 3 acts in their performances. But what I find most clever and impressive about this movie is that this movie is almost like its own magic trick, particularly with Christian Bale's character, Borden. The pledge is that he's just a human being, trying to balance the progression of his career with the needs of his family. This is a life that I think a lot of men and women can relate to in many ways. The turn, however, which is not so ordinary and relatable, is that Borden loses himself to his passion and is imprisoned and eventually killed. And the prestige is when we see Borden return, alive and well and out of prison, and he gets to restart with his daughter. And this seems so much like a magic trick to me because the first time you watch this, it's extremely shocking to see Borden return after we just saw him die. But the second time you watch this, it all seems so obvious and in your face how it was pulled off. And we're fortunate enough to have the movie reveal its secret at the end. Borden has a twin brother, and the 2 of them take turns living the life of Alfred Borden, while the other stays hidden, or is disguised as Mr. Fallon, this guy. And Borden does this with his twin his whole life, so he can successfully be the one magician who can perform the magic trick, the transported man. And the second time you watch this movie, there's so many hints and double meaning lines that seem like they are giving away the answer, but I personally am yet to meet a person who caught the twist before the reveal at the very end. And the fact that such an obvious twist is so hard to catch by the audience relates perfectly to another part of the opening monologue. When Cutter is talking about Act 2, The Turn, he says, "Now you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it. Because of course, you're not really looking. You don't really want to know. You want to be fooled. You wouldn't clap yet because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back." And I think this line captures really well society's fear of the unknown. The best example of this is when Angier finds his own way to perform the transported man, called the real transported man. This, of course, is less of a magician's act and more of a scientist's demonstration, because he is using an incredibly advanced cloning machine designed by Nikola Tesla. And when Angier demonstrates this trick for the manager of the venue, the manager is astounded. But then he says, dress it up a little, disguise it, give them enough reason to doubt it. And I love this line so much because this manager has an excellent point. If Angier performs the trick too well, there will be no Act 3, no prestige. It will just finish at Act 2, The Turn, because the magic looks too real. For the audience and for society, Act 3, The Prestige, is comforting. It gives the audience a sense of closure, security, and safety. It tells us we're in good hands. Everything is as we know it. Therefore, no one is scared. And this theme is a major reason why Nikola Tesla plays such an important role in this movie. Tesla is well aware of the pushback he will receive as an inventor. When speaking to Angier, he says, "Society can only tolerate one change at a time. First time I tried to change the world, I was hailed as a visionary. Second time, I was asked politely to retire." Technological progress is not a magic show. It doesn't include the third act of the prestige, just the pledge and the turn. And if there's no prestige, if we don't bring things back to the way they were, this means change, and therefore can be frightening. Theme number 2, false freedom from sacrifice. At an earlier moment in the film, Cutter insists that Borden and Angier watch the show of magician Chung Ling-soo. Cutter wants to see if they can find out how he does his famous fishbowl trick. After seeing Chung Ling-soo's performance and his fishbowl trick, Borden understands how Chung moves his legs fast enough to successfully perform the trick. As Chung walks slowly and achingly from the venue, Borden says, "This is the trick. This is the performance right here." Total devotion to his art, a lot of self-sacrifice. It's the only way to escape all this. Borden is basically saying that Chung Ling-soo is still very agile physically. He's only pretending he is slow and weak, so no one suspects he moves his legs fast enough to successfully perform the fishbowl trick. And of course, Borden knows this because Borden has the exact same approach to the way he successfully performs the transported man trick. Just like Chung Ling-soo, Borden has totally devoted his life to his craft and has sacrificed an enormous deal of his freedom and well-being in order to succeed further in his career. Borden believes by giving up half of his life to his twin, he can escape the miserable struggle of being a low-income, low-status amateur magician. Overall, Borden is giving up a great deal of his social freedom in order to earn much more financial freedom. But is this exchange really worth it? Borden has to give up so much of his honesty and transparency to uphold his lifelong trick. He loses his wife Sarah to suicide when she feels continuously tormented because he keeps so much of the truth away from her. Each of the twins weren't able to fall in love with each of the women that each of them loved because the secret had to be kept. And Borden loses a friend and begins a deadly rivalry where he can't tell Angier which knot he tied that killed Angier's wife, Julia. And I guess now would be a good time to quickly expand on my theory about why Borden doesn't know which knot he tied, because it's easily the most confusing part of the movie when you really think about it. So here's my theory. Borden and his twin take turns helping perform the water tank trick with Julia. One of the twins is not as good at tying the knot that Cutter wants Borden to tie. This twin doesn't tie it tight enough. However, according to Cutter, it's the safest knot that is easy to slip out of underwater. This is why Cutter says, "I saw you drop the knot again. Some nights you just don't get it, do you?" And Borden says, "It's the wrong knot. The Langford double will hold tighter." And when Cutter argues that the Langford double knot is too tight, Julia confidently interjects, "I can slip a Langford underwater." But Angier and Cutter quickly shut the idea down. However, as we all know, at the next show we see where Julia drowns, Borden and Julia give each other the slightest nod, and Julia looks a little hesitant after the knot is tied. So I'm sure Borden tied the double Langford knot, which Julia couldn't slip out of. And at Julia's funeral, Borden says to Angier he doesn't know which knot he tied. And again, at one of Borden's shows, he tells Angier he still doesn't know. And I think the reason is this. In the movie, we see Borden answer the question twice with the same answer. At the funeral and at his show. He says he doesn't know. And this, in my opinion, is to showcase how both twins have each answered the same question with the same answer for different reasons. I think the twin who actually tied the knot is so ashamed and so guilty of having created such a disaster while performing his greatest passion and accidentally killing someone in the process, that he has repressed the memory of which knot he tied. Therefore, he truly doesn't know. And because of this twin's repression of the memory of this traumatic incident, the other twin who didn't tie the knot will never hear the true answer from his brother. Therefore, he also doesn't know. They both literally do not know. And I'm curious to know what you think about that whole knot tying situation. Let me know. So back to the analysis. When I'm watching this movie, it's pretty clear that between Borden and Angier, Borden is the superior magician. Angier even admits it at the end of the movie. And I think the one main reason is because Borden is more willing to lose touch with humanity and make life-changing sacrifices. As said before, Borden neglects truths from his wife until she feels like she's being tormented every day of her life. Angier remembers his wife and refuses to give up his less appealing stage name because his wife gave it to him. Angier tells Cutter he doesn't want to kill birds to perform tricks, but Borden doesn't think twice about killing birds every night. And most of all, Angier is frustrated with the fact that his double is the one who gets the praise for appearing at the end of The Transported Man. Borden has no problem sharing the praise with his twin brother and literally giving up half of his social, stage, and family life. It's only until Angier decides to kill a new one of his clones every night of each performance that he surpasses the level of success of Borden, which brings me to theme number 3, irony of rivalry. Rivalry is the central concept in this movie that drives the majority of the plot forward. One important rivalry is the one between Edison and Tesla. There's a lurking presence of Edison in this movie, wanting to surpass or remain in competition with Tesla. And I think just by looking at the history of rivalries and the rivalries in this movie, it's clear that rivalries often result in two very ironic outcomes: progress and destruction. For example, while we see Tesla innovating beyond Angier's imagination with wireless bulbs and a cloning device, we also see his entire laboratory and temporary home destroyed by Edison's men. And this, of course, runs parallel with the main rivalry in this movie between Borden and Angier. The more frustrated and hateful these two become of each other, the more destructive they become of each other's careers and themselves. However, at the same time, their hate and frustration progresses them more and more rapidly, both financially and professionally. And it gets to the point where both of them end up successfully performing the most impressive trick of their time. But at the pinnacle of their magical talent is also the pinnacle of their misery, inhumanity, and obsession. Even Tesla in this film says he is aware of his obsession over scientific progress that has consumed his entire life. And this is why Cutter says to Angier, obsession is a young man's game. Because as we get older, the payoff lessens, and the willingness to sacrifice slowly shrinks smaller and smaller. And I think this is the major question that this film is asking the audience. Is the progress, the success, and the obsessive passion all really worth it? And I think at the end of this movie, we get some of the darkest possible answers to that question. As Borden reveals that he had a twin all along to Angier, he says, "I loved Sarah, he loved Olivia. We each had half of a life really, which was enough for us, just, but not for them. See sacrifice, Robert? That's the price of a good trick." And then Angier says to Borden, "It took courage to climb into that machine every night, not knowing if I'd be the man in the box or in the prestige." Both men have become victims of their passion and success that has emerged from rivalry and has concluded in misery. And after Borden kills Angier and returns to his daughter, he's given a choice that every passionate creative and performer are faced with. Borden can either be imprisoned by the unrelenting drive to impress the world, or strike that balance between being passionate and being present, and recognize the irreplaceable value of right now. Alright, that's my analysis. Subscribe for weekly videos, and please send me recommendations. Requiem for a Dream is next. I'm still searching for Oldboy, and please let me know your thoughts and ideas around The Prestige. I would love to discuss. I hope to see you again, and thank you so much for watching. See you later.